and welcome to this another episode of ECCB Connects. Today we'll be chatting with Laurel Seraphin Bedford, one of the Deputy Directors in the Bank Supervision Department, about how the ECCB regulates and supervises financial institutions. Laurel, welcome to ECCB Connects.
Shemalan, it's my pleasure.
Laurel, one of the key functions of the central bank is to regulate and supervise licensed financial institutions. What does this regulation and supervision entail?
Shemalan, that's a topic area that is just so vast. It entails a lot, but in a nutshell, supervision and regulation entails ensuring that the proper legislative framework is in place so that the financial institutions can provide their financial services in an effective and efficient manner. It also entails ensuring that our licensed financial institutions comply with whatever legislative and regulatory regime exists. And it also involves risk management, being able to identify risk, forecast risk, and more importantly, manage risk. And that is what, in a nutshell, regulation and supervision is all about.
Why is this function, regulation and supervision of financial institutions, important?
When I'm asked that question, I draw this analogy. Regulation and supervision is to the financial system what oxygen is to the human being. It's something that's very essential. Number one, it helps maintain financial stability and it helps maintain confidence in our financial system. Just imagine if everybody were left to do their own thing. Things would fall apart. We would have a system that's not stable. We would have a system where persons just have no confidence in what we do. And that would have implications from a number of fronts. We can see that it would pose a problem for us with persons hoarding their monies. Oh, it's best I leave my money under my bed, put it in my shoebox as opposed to putting it in a bank. It's better if I invest my monies outside of the region. Even our foreign investors out there will not want to come to our space. So it's very important in that light. It's also important in establishing that framework which I spoke about earlier, that risk management framework, to ensure that everybody is, all the participants who are licensed in the financial system are adhering to the rules, because the rules are not meant to penalize anybody. They're meant to help financial institutions, as I would have indicated before, deliver their services and their products in an effective manner, and it's all to the benefit of the depositor. Because as a bank supervision department, our key functions really, and as the regulatory arm of the ECCB, our key function entails primarily ensuring that depositors' funds are safe. It's not any regulator's dream to have any of a depositor lose not even 1 cent of their dollar that they've invested in any financial institution. And so that's one of our primary functions in the Bank Supervision Department.
Ensuring that
people's monies are safe when they place them in the financial institution. And that, of course, helps build confidence in the system. As a bank supervision department, we're also very concerned with the performance of our financial institutions. And so we help to ensure that the necessary framework is in place that would help keep our banks adequately secured, adequately capitalized, having enough capital to buffer or to take care of any risk that may arise in their balance sheet. We have to make sure that the system is in place to ensure that banks are adequately liquid, so that should there be any sudden withdrawal of funds from the system, the banks are able to cover that. And so as a department, these are some of the things that we're concerned about. These are some of our main functions. And I need to point out as well, as part of our functions in ensuring that regulation and supervision is effective in the region, what we do as well is keep abreast with international best practices and developments where supervision and regulation is concerned. This is very, very important, because as a region we cannot be left behind while the rest of the world is moving on. So the Bank Supervision Department is kind of like the watchdog of the central bank to ensure that we as a central bank, we're on top of all of the current regulatory reforms that are taking place, and where applicable we would put the right approaches and systems in place.
You mentioned this framework, regulatory framework. Explain that to us.
Well, the framework would involve the issuing of the proper legislation. So, for instance, we have the Banking Act, which guides the institutions that are licensed under the ECCB auspices. We have as well a number of prudential standards, prudential guidelines, codes of best practices that are issued so that persons can know how to relate with their commercial banks, and the commercial banks as well can know what are the best things and practices that they should implement and employ in order to keep not just the institution stable and sound, but the wider financial system stable and sound.
Okay, so the Bank Supervision Department is directly responsible for that regulatory and supervisory function of the central bank. What are the specific tasks the department undertakes in carrying out this function?
Right, basically our task or activities are on 3 levels. We have what we call surveillance, we have on-site examinations, and we have a relationship management built into our job functions. In terms of surveillance, we would scan the news, media, all sorts of resources as much as possible, even at the licensed financial institutions' website, their financial statements, a wide range of resources to keep abreast with what's happening, not just in the financial institutions, but on the system as a whole. Because the system is very intertwined. We have, for instance, the insurance industry, the insurance companies, the credit unions that hold monies with banks and that sort of thing. So there's this close connection among the sectors, and so it's very important as a central bank for us to keep abreast with what's happening in the other sectors and the wider system and any implications it would have for the banking sector, bearing in mind that the banking sector accounts for the majority of the financial sector of the ECCU. We also would, in terms of our relationship management, liaise with the banks, our financial institutions that are licensed under the Banking Act on different levels. So there's interaction from the board, executive management, liaison officers, and by so doing we're kept abreast of any risk emerging or present and how they're being managed at the bank. We also interact very closely on the national front with the local regulators, because they are the ones who supervise the non-bank sectors, the sectors that are not licensed under the Banking Act.
For
and
example?
So the credit unions, the insurance, the money services sector. And so this close and ongoing interaction is very important when executing our functions, because we have, as I said before, to keep abreast of where emerging risks are in our financial system. And then on the regional level, we're part of what we call the Caribbean Group of Banking Supervisors. And even at that level, we keep abreast of what's going on. And it presents at that level the right forum where, as a region, we can have a coordinated approach to how we deal with systemic risk, how we deal with emerging issues, how we deal with putting controls in place. And from so as part of our functions, relationship management is very, very important. And the last one I mentioned was on-site examination. What we do when we go on-site basically is to just confirm what we would have found out from our surveillance and to ensure that the right frameworks are in place for mitigating risk at the institutions.
And when you say on-site, into the bank, physical premises?
Right, we actually go into the licensed financial institutions. We have a presence there, we have discussions with the management, we look at their balance sheet, their income statements, we look at if their accounting systems and other systems are comparable with and facilitate best practices. We look to see enterprise risk management wise if things are kosher and things are being done based on best practices.
So you speak about regulation and supervision of the financial institutions. Now, what does that mean to an ordinary citizen? Let's say a mother, she's saving to educate her children. What does that mean? to her?
Well, it means the world. I know it means the world of good to me to know that I have a central bank that is on top of the financial system in terms of best practices, in terms of ensuring that the system remains stable and it's performing, in terms of ensuring that the ECC region as a whole is perceived as a pristine financial center. And that in itself is comforting. And I can assure the listening public out there that the ECCB is on top of its regulation. Our standards are comparable with best international practices, and we continue to monitor.
Laurel, you have been involved in bank supervision for just about 15 years. What keeps you going at this job?
Well, I would interpret the question to mean what's most satisfying about the job for me. And for me, it's just the pleasure of knowing that at the end of the day, I would have done my best as an examiner, the bank supervision and the wider ECCB would have done its best to ensuring that customers' funds and customers' deposits are safe and secure, and that our financial system is robust, we're financially stable, and we're on the right trajectory.
Laurel, thank you very much
You're
for speaking
welcome.
with us on ECCB Connects.
You're welcome.
You're watching ECCB Connects, protecting our currency, developing our region. And now for this week's financial tip.
Are you living within your means? If you constantly find yourself needing credit
to get you to the next payday,
you are living beyond your means.
To view any episode of ECCB Connects, anytime, any place, at your convenience, check out our YouTube channel, ECCB Connects.
You've been watching ECCB Connects. Join us again next week for another program when we'll continue our discussion on who we are, what we do, and how we serve you.